when you go down in Deep Ellum to have a little fun. You must have your $15 when the policemen come. Oh, sweet mama, and daddy got the Deep Ellum blues. Aloha. Today, I want to talk about something that isn't usually discussed in the tropics. I want to talk about growing blueberries in Hawaii. There's all kinds of exotic stuff, pineapples and bananas and coffee and vanilla and these sorts of things that grow really, really well here. But the blueberry is generally considered something that works better in the mainland and actually in the upper tiers, better than the lower tiers of the United States. It tends to be a plant that likes cold winters, so it has dormancy. I grew up in the upper Midwest, and so the blueberry was part of my childhood. We didn't grow them or plant them. They just ended up growing wild through the sand dunes in Indiana and the sandy piney woods up in Wisconsin. They were also abundant in peat bogs and also sometimes on granite and pine needles. Any kind of an acetic condition in the upper Midwest, we would find the blueberry growing. Generally, it was what we refer to as the low bush. Somewhere out there on the east coast around New Jersey, they had what was called the northern high bush. Most of my youth was spent gathering blueberries from the wild. To this day, I don't actually think that any blueberries taste quite as good as the ones you find out in the wild. Those plants really have quite a wonderful flavor. So I developed a fondness for this particular fruit back around 25 years ago when I moved from Wisconsin to California. One of the first things I wanted to do was to begin to grow the blueberry in California because I really missed them bad. And at that time, growing blueberries in the western United States was not a thing. Okay, very few people were addressing this issue. I was working in a nursery at the time, and I knew I could get my hands on some of the southern high and low bush that come from the Gulf Coast in Florida that might just work in the Bay Area's climate. So I proceeded to order myself several of the southern high bush and low bush types, put them into containers in my yard in California using azalea mix and so on. And one day I had the California rare fruit growers over taking a tour of the yard. So I'm showing off the ugnies and showing off the guavas that I'm raising and the sapote and so forth. Well, they'd kind of seen all that stuff before. What really surprised them and got their attention was when they turned around and saw that I was actually growing blueberries with fruit on them in the Bay Area. Now, at that time, this was rare. Today, it's common. We have quite a few varieties of berries that work pretty well in California on low chill. Well, when I purchased the property in Hawaii, I really didn't think that blueberries were going to happen here. But then suddenly I started finding people here on the island that were propagating the southern blueberries again. The Biloxi and the Gulf Stream and a bunch of these other berries that all come from right down in deep Dixie where there's not much winter chill. So, well, hey, nice acid soil here. Better conditions than we had in California. California's neutral to basic soils are not good for blueberry culture. That's why I had to use containers there. But here we have acetic soils. We also have abundant moisture, which is something else that the blueberry likes. So I said, what the heck? And I went out and I purchased a series of a dozen different varieties of Florida and Gulf Coast blueberries, and I put them in here at the house. Well, for the first few years, things went pretty well. As the young plants were very vigorous, they took off, and man, they made all the blueberries that the birds around here could eat. I got one or two, but they actually did fairly well. Then over time, the plants started to get a little bit woody, and the yield declined, and things did not look as sweet. Then I met Peter. Peter took a look at my bushes. He says, yeah, they look a little scrawny. Well, he had been involved in a project of raising commercial blueberries in Mexico. Oh, that got me interested, and I said, well, how the heck did you do that? He told me that they would take the plants after fruiting, cut the plants about in half, removing a lot of the oldest growth, but they'd really cut the plants back hard. Then they'd apply high nitrogen fertilizers to the blueberries. The pruning and the fertilizer would force the plants to pop back out, begin to vegetate, and produce flower buds. And he said every time they got done fruiting, no matter what time of year it was, the plants would be routinely cut back, re-fertilized. They'd come back again and produce a crop. This is a little bit different than the way we do things up north, where pruning is kind of light on the berry, and we usually stay away from real high nitrogen fertilizers. So I say, hey, what the heck, I got nothing to lose. The birds are just eating my berries in Hawaii anyway. So I went through, I took my plants, I pruned them back pretty hard, maybe not quite as hard as Peter had instructed, but I cut them back good, especially taking away a lot of the old growth. And then I turned around and I used liquid fish emulsion, which is fairly high nitrogen, or nice organic, soft fertilizer that the blueberries should be able to tolerate. I went through and a couple times after pruning them, I sprayed them with this stuff. Well, son of a gun, here we are heading towards February. The days are getting longer, and my blueberries have burst out into leaves, flowers, and berries. Check this out. This guy right here is a Biloxi, and as you can see here, he's popped out with lots of nice berries, more flowers coming, and good foliage. This plant was approximately cut in two by me. I believe I cut the plants back somewhere after Thanksgiving, maybe between there and Christmas. Over here is another one, different variety, and here's another variety. And running down the row, we got all kinds of different blueberries over here. Some are responding better than others to the treatment, and some a little later. This guy right over here is more flowery and less berries. But things are looking good. As you can see, I got plenty enough green berries over here. More than enough for the birds. Now, up and behind my berries, you'll see here I've got these beautiful hibiscus. I just finished cutting the heck. Right there, you can see the stumps out of some of the pink ones. They were turning into trees. I will be pruning this red one here very soon too, but I love the flowers and I just can't cut them all at once. Right down here on the ground in front of the blueberries, you can see I have all the sticks and the trash from pruning the hibiscus. And so what we got going on here is what we refer to in Hawaii as a stick mulch. Oftentimes crops are grown with another crop right next to it, and one crop is cut and sacrificed, laid on the soil for the nutrients and the organic matter it produces, and the other crop, in this case the blueberries, are favored for production. Now usually stick mulching over here is done with kukui nut trees that are coppiced, or it's done with inga, the ice cream bean. Those are two of the most common. We get nitrogen out of the inga, and the kukui nut provide a lot of phosphorus for the soil. In my case, this is my landscape up front of my house over here. I love having flowers to look at. Flowers are food for the mind. So for those of you who only wish to grow food and never plant ornamentals, well, you can use an ice cream bean or something else for a stick mulch. But in my case, in this location, I'm using hibiscus for stick mulch. They grow like crazy. I get to cut these things back 3-4 times a year around here if I want to keep them down to the size of a rose bush, which is what I like to do. And so it provides me with huge amounts of organic matter that are then tossed on the soil beneath the berries, keep a good healthy soil biota, and as the leaves break down, they provide a nice soft fertilizer for the blueberries. So there you have it. That's really about all there is to raising blueberries under tropical conditions in Hawaii. My garden's at 1,600 feet up here on Kilauea, so it's a little cooler than down by the shore. I'm not sure how well you would do with blueberries down in Hilo, but up here in Mountain View, they do really well. And Peter's trick with the Mexican blueberry technique was top-notch. It worked out, and so Next time around, I'll probably cut them back even harder. So if you live in a tropical location and you happen to come from the upper Midwest or the Northeast or Canada or someplace where you're familiar with the blueberry and grew up and loved it, and you're missing them with your heart, you can do it. It can be done. The whole trick here in Hawaii is use the southern bushes. Florida varieties, Gulf Coast varieties all work pretty well. Behind me here, I do believe Biloxi seems to be one of the better ones. Once the bushes have fruited, take the bushes, cut them in two, remove most of the older wood, and apply high nitrogen fertilizers to the bushes. Now there are a few different possible things that could work for that one. As an organic, blood meal works, fish emulsion's going to work. Now you could use cottonseed meal. Actually, I think even alfalfa meal would be pretty good too. So if you're growing vegan blueberries, try alfalfa meal on them. Don't use harsh mineral type fertilizers with blueberries. They don't like it. They really don't like it at all. So stick to an organic, something with a good first number. Apply it in a good dose right after the pruning, and apply it a couple times more until you start to see leaves, flowers coming on the plants. Past that, the only problem I have here is birds. So maybe Agribon 19, floating row cover over the top, or some people like to bother to cage things. I just don't do that myself. But I will probably try to get most of my crop this year by putting a floating row cover to keep the birdies off. So that's it. Southern types, cut them back halfway. Every time they're done fruiting, repeat it and apply high nitrogen fertilizers. Stand back and watch it happen. Blueberries under tropical conditions never would have